sharing a bit. I want to start by sharing a bit of our history, the tribe's history. The Muwekma Ohlone tribe today is comprised of all the known surviving American Indian lineages aboriginal to the San Francisco Bay Area, who trace their ethno-historic origins from the indigenous tribes' villages who continuously occupied these lands for over 10,000 years. And upon the arrival of the Spanish in the late 1700s, all the Muwekma Ohlone members were involuntarily confined into the three Bay Area missions, San Francisco, which Dolores, Mission Santa Clara, and Mission San Jose. And after the secularization of the missions in 1834, sorry, you guys, I pushed accept. I let somebody in.
Charleen, do you want me to start your slide?
Yeah, you could keep it right there. You could keep it right there. So after the secularization of the missions in 1834, most of the mission Indians who were rounded up from outside the Ohlone-speaking territories left the area, returning back to their non-Ohlone villages. But those who remained in the former Ohlone-speaking territories came together as a distinct community living on two Indian rancherias in Pleasanton and in Niles, where they were able to revive their cultural practices such as the sweat lodge and ceremonial dances. These two rancherias were very close to each other, and they formed a distinct community that was well known locally. In 1906, our tribe was identified and included in an Indian census ordered by Congress of the landless California tribes. Being identified in 1906 census and thereafter being named in 1914, 1923, and again in 1927 on the list of tribes to receive land by Congress effectively gave the Muwekma Ohlone people acknowledgement, also known as recognition as an American Indian tribe. Just to be clear, Muwekma's existence and identity do not depend on federal recognition or acknowledgement. The community, meaning the people, make up the tribe, and we were and are a tribal community long before the federal government recognized us. Federal recognition does not create tribes. It only recognizes social political communities that predate the United States. And it creates a trust relationship between the tribe and the federal government, which entitles tribes and all their members to certain federal benefits and triggers the operation of a whole body of U.S. law involving respect for tribal sovereignty, including the protection and repatriation of our ancestral remains and sacred sites. Tribal nations ceded millions of acres of land that made up the United States of what it is today. And in return, we received the guarantee of ongoing self-government on our own lands. This right of sovereignty and self-determination was promised in perpetuity to tribal nations, and that government-to-government relationship can only be terminated by Congress. And although we were known locally by many names, like Mission San Jose Indians, Pleasanton Indians, Ohlone Indians, in 1914, the Indian Agency, without informing the tribe or anyone else, labeled us Verona Band after a railroad station built for Senator George Hearst and his wife Phoebe Apperson Hearst. And even though the Verona Band was listed in 1914, 1923, and again in 1927 on the list of tribes to receive land, an Indian agent without the benefit of a site visit or need assessment reported that our tribe was not in need of land and removed the Verona Band from the list of tribes to receive the land that was promised to them by Congress. These two departmental actions and administrative errors of mislabeling the tribe as Verona Band, and then refusing to buy our land, buy us a land base that was mandated by Congress was the beginning of our political erasure and our disenfranchisement. Then in 1925, Alfred Kroeber, who headed the anthropology department at UC Berkeley, contributed to that political erasure when he declared the Ohlone Coast-Ohlone people were extinct for all practical purposes in his monumental handbook for the Indians of California. Kroeber, who personally interviewed the elders of the Verona Band, Muwekma community, from 1904 to 1914, was familiar with the landless tribal community. He would later reverse his position in 1955 when he published an article, Continuity of an Indian Population in California from 1770, 1848 to 1955. But sadly, the damage was caused by Kroeber, and that couldn't easily be reversed. And although the Bureau of Indian Affairs has admitted that Muwekma was acknowledged as a federally recognized tribe in 1927, and that our status was never terminated by Congress, they still neglected to place our tribe on the first official list in 1978 of a federally recognized tribe. And that was another crucial departmental error. When our tribe sought to clarify our status in the early 80s, the BIA claimed we no longer were considered a tribe, and that for reasons they themselves didn't understand, our tribe had withered away. Even when we presented clear evidence of our existence from the late 1700s to present day, the BIA rejected our evidence and made a final determination that we no longer existed as a tribe. But that was the culmination of our political erasure. But of course, we haven't withered away. Their conclusions that we cease to exist as a tribal community is not supported by the facts or evidence. After 40 years of struggling to clarify our status, I now realize and believe the evidence and facts don't matter to those in power. I once believed that the department's influence and neglect was to blame, but now I see the purposeful actions that led to our erasure. They purposely misnamed us, removed us from the list to receive land, left us off the 1978 list of recognized tribes, and then completely ignored our evidence in their evaluation of our petition for federal recognition. But the BIA has in the past corrected departmental errors and reaffirmed statuses of other tribes in California, like Ohlone, Lower Lake, and Tejon. These other tribes had all been previously recognized and never terminated by Congress, continue to exist to present day, and had been left off the 1978 list, just like Muwekma. And I always ask myself, so why not reaffirm Muwekma? The answer is as plainly simple as it is plainly wrong. San Francisco Bay Area real estate is too expensive to belong to the indigenous population. They needed to mine gold, develop cities, and build Silicon Valley. The tech companies built enormous wealth on stolen Muwekma lands without having to worry about the displacement of their first inhabitants. Is it coincidental that today there are no federally recognized tribes in the entirety of the San Francisco Bay Area? After decades of attempt to exterminate us, they tried to assimilate and finally realized termination and political erasure would ensure a tribe-free zone in the San Francisco Bay Area, so that there would be no one to stand in the way of their desecration of our sacred sites and our ancestral remains. Our ancestors have been here for 10,000 years, and today the Muwekma Ohlone people still reside on their homeland. So I believe in today's era of social and racial justice, it's time for the Muwekma Ohlone tribe to finally gain recognition from the people, the cities, and the federal government. I want to start my slides just to go over my own personal experience with slide number 2, if you can, Sudiki.
Okay, slide number two.
Two.
Number two. Is it the same slide that
Yes.
I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. Then I will go with that. Okay, do you see?
I can see that. If you can click to
Okay,
slide
I'm in the
number two.
wrong page or?
Yeah, if you can click to slide number 2, go up a few. Yeah, there you go. Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
Okay.
So this is my own personal experience. This picture is a picture of my mother hitting an archaeologist with a shovel in the early 80s. This is the old Holiday Inn site in the city of San Jose, where a mass grave was found here. My mother, her mother, and our relatives, her aunts and uncles, showed up to the site to protect the site. But this archaeologist told my mother and my grandmother that they don't belong on this site because the Ohlone people are extinct and these are not their ancestors and they need to get off. Well, my mother disagreed with him and she hit him, swung the shovel, hitting him, and she paid dearly. You know, she went to jail. She went bankrupt and we lost our home. So that happened when I was 8. So this incident here was very traumatic for me moving forward, and it kind of built who I am today as a person and as a leader. Is that it just showed me that my mother as the leader back then, it didn't stop her for continuing to fight for our tribal rights, to protect our ancestors. And this is what she instilled in me and other tribal members who are now young, who are now adults, leading the tribe for protecting our ancestors and seeking our federal recognition status. We were all taught that we must protect our sovereignty, protect our sacred sites, and our burial sites. And this wasn't the first act of resistance. Back in 1960, when the Ohlone Caltrans was trying to put a road through the Ohlone cemetery, my mother's mother, who was at this site, her aunts and uncles, and all the cousins showed up together with the help of the San Francisco Historical Society to stop the desecration of where our people were buried, and they were successful. And here, just because how they were taught by the relatives before that, we are carrying this effort forward. You could click to the next one. And here's a picture again and this is my grandmother, Dolores Sanchez, and my mother, Rosemary Cambra, and me as a very, very young adult behind my mom. The next slide. And I like to always like to read this famous quote by Chief Red Cloud. They made us many promises, but they only kept one. They promised to take our land, and they did. The next slide. And here are our tribal members at events, different events around the Bay Area. Here's one with London Breed invited our tribal leadership to an event on maybe about 3 or 4 years ago in San Francisco in October. And it was for Columbus Day, but now it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Here in Berkeley, we have at People's Park, there's some renderings and murals of our ancestors on this wall, and our tribal members celebrating that day with the community there. And then below, the bigger picture with our tribal members, we gather every year for a barbecue in the summertime. The next slide. And here's more of the events that we are always invited to. This was an event at Stanford University. This was a renaming of the Stanford Road. They renamed that, and we were invited to do a song and a blessing and a land acknowledgement. The next slide. And here, this was very important for us to do. It's been 125 years, 2 years ago, when we last danced. Our Capitan had passed away, in 1890. And we stopped. We didn't have another capitan to come up and carry the dance forward. So our roundhouse on Phoebe Hearst's land was taken down. And we did not dance again after that, up until a young man, a young tribal youth of ours, really wanted to bring this back for our people. And here we have our members dancing again after 125 years. And with the help and support, the pictures down below are two tribal women. The young woman there is our tribal youth, our tribal ambassador. And the other woman there, she's actually, she's a member of the Wilton Rancheria. So the Miwok relatives of ours is helping support our effort to revitalize our dances. Next slide. And here's a map of our area, our ancestral area. The next slide. And here, this is part of my presentation, how, the question is, what happened to the Ohlone people? I really think these big corporations should really be asking these questions. What happened to the Ohlones? They created immense wealth on these very lands that the people are still here. But I feel like they don't ask these questions because do they want to turn a blind eye because they feel guilty, or do they want to keep moving forward and not looking back? But we're still here. They're here and they're making wealth off the very lands that were stolen from the Ohlone people, my people. Next slide. Next slide. And here's the period of the Spanish. Next slide. The mission system, the 3 Bay Area missions, Mission San Jose, Mission Santa Clara, and Mission Dolores. Next one. This is a depiction of the people and the mission system. Next one. And Governor Peter Burnett. Our state is responsible for the genocide that happened here in the Bay Area. And, just a few years ago, Governor Gavin Newsom apologized to the California natives, the California Indians, for the genocide that happened. But one thing he didn't do was invite the tribes that are from the Bay Area. I mean, when I asked that question, you see this big black hole. And nobody wants to acknowledge the tribes that are still here, from San Francisco to Monterey. There's Muwekma Ohlone in the San Francisco Bay region. We have Ama Mutsun. We have some smaller tribes, the Rumsons, the Sicilians, and then we have Esla Nation in Monterey County, and you don't hear about them. And we were not. I could tell you right now, we were. The institutions in our territory nominated us to be a part of the celebratory event and to be on the California Truth and Healing Council that he created. Not one of us was invited to any of those events. Why not? That's the question I ask, because they need to take responsibility to what happened. We're still here, not just the tribes outside of our area, the people and the tribes that are still here. There needs to be a correction and an apology, because Governor Peter Burnett, created a policy of extermination against all Indians and tribes in California. The next slide. Here's more pictures of the events, tribal events that we have. The bottom picture is a Christmas party that we have every year with our tribal members. Next event. More pictures of us dancing. The next one. More pictures, and I'm in the middle. I also dance. The next, is that it? Oh, yeah, more tribal members, the youth. And it's so important that the youth, they're really wanting this to come back, right? Our culture, connecting to our culture, our language. Our language was revitalized in 2002. And we have our members speaking the language. And now the children are learning the language and the dances. So it's very important because, you know, because of the boarding schools, and I have to say the Catholic laundry services and the Catholic orphanages that we were all a part of kind of disconnected us from our language and our lands and our dances. So it's very important. It's the youth that are eager to learn and take action. Next slide. Some more dances and events that we are a part of. You could click through real quick. Yeah, you could keep clicking. It's just federal recognition. The next one. You could keep going. Next. So here's the Ohlone Cemetery with a couple of tribal members who were present, who were children at the time, and now they're grandmothers, you know. So here's pictures of them taking a picture next to the Ohlone Indian Cemetery sign in the 60s. So here's another one. UC Berkeley, you know, is holding thousands of our ancestors. And just from one county, Alameda County, and we're not discussing the other counties. Just from Alameda County, they're holding 12,000 ancestors, 250,000 artifacts that belong with these burial sites. And the reason why recognition is so important to us is because it gives us not only the right to self-govern ourselves in our own lands, but we need to be federally recognized to repatriate our ancestors. Because of a policy that was created in 1994. We cannot put our people to rest because of that policy, and we're not federally recognized. I mean, there's a whole slew of issues that we face because of not having that status. You know, our members, as they continue that path to connecting culturally and spiritually, we do not have access to the eagle repository where the eagle feathers are held. Only federally recognized tribes are able to access eagle feather, and he's a part of our creation story. So it's sad that we still face, you know, really it's religious, it's a religious freedom. We don't have religious freedoms here, and only because we don't have federal recognition status. You could click that on. And just a few years ago, I wish our ethnohistorian, it looks like Michael Wilcox, he's our acting TIPO, is on here with us. The tribe did a DNA study that confirmed our people have lived in the Bay Area for thousands of years. We did a DNA analysis in a site in Sunol. And the reason why the tribe took this stance, because not all tribes, agree with DNA analysis. But the reason why the previous chair decided to do this was because we've always had to prove who we were, to the city officials, institutions, and archaeologists. So the previous chair decided we're going to take this into our own hands. We are going to prove that we are the people from this area. Everything that we have been saying is the truth, and we are going to share our own story. And it's going to be our story that we tell and no one else. So this is the second, actually, DNA analysis that was done on the tribe. My mother did a DNA analysis on a burial site in Elmwood that was uncovered there, and she also matched the ancestor that she tested up against. And here our council members decided to do the DNA analysis as a whole, and they also were confirmed that they match these analyses. The next one. The next one. We'll just keep strolling through. It's everything that I've said in the... You could keep going. Yeah. So here's a letter from one of the acting assistant secretaries that took action on reaffirming one of the 3 tribes in California that were previously recognized, never terminated by Congress. And this was just the letter from the Assistant Secretary stating, we made a mistake. We forgot to add this tribe to the 1978 list of recognized tribes. And it was that simple as a letter. And that's what he did. He is one of the 3 assistant secretaries that took action. The next one. And I always say, why not Muwekma? Why not? Because we fit in the same category. And I say it's the land that we live on is way too valuable to leave to Indians here in the Bay Area. These tribes are from, spread out further away from urban areas. And so that just, for me, confirms what I've been feeling about the lands that we live on. And here is the Deb Haaland, Secretary of the Interior. Since 1970, Congress has recognized or reaffirmed 26 tribes, including tribes that were terminated or denied recognition through the acknowledgement process, like Muwekma. We were denied through the federal recognition process, and they took action either administratively or congressionally. But yet we still have yet to hear back from Deb Haaland to see if she would have courage to take action in our case. We have hope because she's Indigenous. And here we have a picture of our elder, our last elder. He was 100 years old. He passed away in September last year. He was our last Verona band member. He was a member of the recognized tribe when he was born. And he went to war and he came back. And what they said is you are not from a recognized tribe. And they denied him services that he needed. And I feel really sad that he didn't get to see federal recognition in his lifetime because he fought along with my mother. And this is Rosemary Canberra, the previous chair. He fought along with her for our federal recognition status and our right to protect our ancestors. And at the end, we are Muwekma and we are still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Charleen. That's very powerful presentation. Now we are open to questions and answers. If any of you have a question, please raise your hand, or either by your hand or by on your Zoom button. Okay, go ahead, Evan.
What process did you use to identify? You say about 600 members of the tribe that are there. I guess they come together at these meetings. How did you find them, and how did you satisfy yourself that they're members of the tribe?
We are 10 core lineages, and they are identified in the Indian census. And there's different families, and there's a lot of intermarrying that happened with the different mission systems. So through historical journals from the Spanish, historical interviews from J.P. Harrington, who actually was an anthropologist traveling in the early 1900s, identifying, any surviving culture up and down California. And he interviewed our people and identified our last speakers at the time, which was in 1934. We have records, baptismal records, historical records, interviews that tie these 10 core families together.
And can I add to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Alan Leventhal. I was with San Jose State University from 1978 till I retired in 2019 with the anthropology department and the dean's office in the College of Social Sciences. I've had the honor of working with the tribe since 1980 and helped co-write their legal documentation with 6 linear feet of documentation submitted to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So the tribe, for the documentation we submitted to the Bureau, included the 1900 Indian census, the 1905-06 Special Indian Census for Pleasanton and Niles, the 1910 Indian Census. They're the men who enlisted in the United States Armed Forces in World War I before they were United States citizens, and then when they enrolled with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. From 1928 to 32, 48 to 57, 1968 to 71. And they're the same families that gathered to protect the Ohlone Indian Cemetery. In 1962, there were 4,000 Indians buried at the cemetery, and the Oakland Diocese was going to sell off the cemetery. So as the chairwoman said, they bridged with the American Indian Historical Society. They appear in the local newspapers. Congressman Don Edwards tried to put the land into trust. And the reason why the land was not put into trust was that during World War II, the man who is the director of the Japanese American internment camps, Dylan S. Meyer, his next assignment was the returning American Indian veterans, the 80,000 American Indian veterans coming back from the Pacific and European theaters and Korea. And originally his job as Commissioner of Indian Affairs was to terminate every single tribe in the United States. But the tribe kept on organizing itself, even though they were a landless tribe. Let's go back a little bit. 7 Muwekma men served, enlisted in the Army, Navy, and the Marine Corps from 1914, before America entered into the war, World War I, till 1920. Almost all the men served overseas in the Pacific and the European theaters in World War II, including Hank Alvarez served in the 101st Airborne Division, landed at Utah Beach, Normandy. His cousin was in the 82nd Airborne Division, in the 508th Parachute Division, and they were in the most fierce battles on both sides of the theaters. They served in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and they're still serving today in the Army, Navy, Army and the Marine Corps. So their service is very, for a small tribe. Next thing, a particular academic who wrote for his doctoral dissertation, a fellow named Dobbins, revised the Aboriginal population of California at the time of Spanish contact, 1769. His estimate was revised upwards to between 1 million to 1.5 million Indians in the state. By the 1920s, there were less than 20,000 left alive. The Muwekmas in the San Francisco Bay Area numbered between 20 and 30,000. They found protection on the East Bay Rancherias in the 19th and 20th centuries. By the time they enrolled with the Bureau of Indian Affairs in 1928 to 32, there's 62 people that we can identify left alive. They were decimated, like along with the other tribes. Now, the reason why we know more about the tribes of California was that there was a philanthropic group named the Northern California Indian Association that was concerned about the dying Indians of California. And the secretary came from San Jose. He's an unsung hero. His name is Charles E. Kelsey. In 1904, he submitted a memorial showing the location of all the dying Indian communities in California that were landless. While he was back there, a clerk and he from the Senate pointed out, sealed under secrecy in the Senate archives, was a packet labeled California. The Senate voted to remove the seal of secrecy, and they found the 18 unratified treaties of California. The federal government, its only legal instrument to quiet the Aboriginal title of tribes was through treaty. And even though California became a state in 1850, Congress and President Millard Fillmore, appropriated $100,000, sent 3 commissioners in 1851 to negotiate 18 treaties when they divided up the state in return for the California Indians to cede California to the United States. 8.5 million acres of land were to be set aside. Treaties went back to Washington. The newly elected senators from California argued Indians should get nothing, and the warfare continued. The decimation continued. So the treaties were sealed under Senate secret archives until their rediscovery in 1905. Congress freaked out when they realized that the California Indians never gave up their legal title to California. The problem was they were not US citizens. So they named Kelsey Special Indian Agent for Northern California. He had less than a year to cover Los Angeles to the Oregon border, to crisscross the state, and conduct a special Indian census. The Muwekmas appear at Pleasanton and Niles, and they fell under the direct jurisdiction of the United States government as a federally recognized tribe awaiting for appropriations to buy land within the Bay Area. They are named in correspondence as the Verona Band of Alameda County. Why Verona? It was named after the train station that Western Pacific Railroad built for Phoebe Hearst. Her husband was a US Senator. They bought 1,900 acres of land in the East Bay, including the tribe's rancheria. And she built her mansion, Hacienda de Pozo de Verona, after Verona, Italy. And Kelsey, for want of recording the tribe, named them after the railroad station over in the East Bay. They were known as the Verona Band of Alameda County. And when we submitted this evidence to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they agreed that the tribe was federally recognized. And by the way, the Bureau of Indian Affairs was exceedingly hostile. They were supposed to do an objective review, but they agreed that the tribe was federally recognized. And when we used the term terminated, they said, no, the tribe was never terminated. Only Congress has the authority to terminate a tribe. In the courts, the federal courts reaffirmed that the federal status of the tribe, but the Bureau refused to extend federal recognition back to the tribe. They said you cannot use your BIA enrollments, which was approved by the Secretary of Interior and the federal courts from 28 to 32, 48 to 57, 68 to 71. You cannot use as evidence that your children went to Indian boarding schools in the 30s and 40s. That's not evidence that you're Indian if your kids go to Indian boarding schools. So they did all of this sleight of hand. The reason why they enrolled with the Bureau of Indian Affairs was that in 1924, Indians become citizens and they realized they still have legal title to 8.5 million acres of land, and they started to sue. The state attorney general Webb started to sue the United States and was given license to sue the federal government, and they consolidated all of the dockets under the California Indian Jurisdictional Act of 1928. I won't get into all the details there, but it was a settlement.
Excuse me, Alan.
Yeah.
I
I will get 2 more things to say.
You are very resourceful, but you are going a little outside of the scope of today's event.
Yeah, but let me finish just 2 things, please. In 1950s, they were issued checks for $150 for each surviving head of household for the value of 8.5 million acres of land with interest back to 1852. In 1971, they were issued checks for $668.61 for the value of the rest of California. So the federal government recognized that they never lost title to the land. The government said, you're Indians, you can't have land. They also were not allowed to have lawyers to represent them in the federal court. And Melvin Belli, if some of you remember Melvin Belli, was representing a separate docket. He was forced out of the federal courthouse in San Francisco in 1970, and Berkeley did a film called 47 Cents an Acre, where they interview him. And he says, I am not allowed to represent my clients. So constitutional processes are not accorded to California Indians, in part until after the claim settlement of 1971. Thank you. That's all I want to babble about.
Thank you,
Okay.
Alan.
Thank you. Hey, Margaret, do you have any question?
Well, I had, this is just an amazing story of which I know virtually nothing. And especially the efforts of the, how is it said now?
Muwekma.
Muwekma and other groups to regain their traditions. One thing that I have done, almost every year, the Stanford has an Indian powwow, and I was wondering, Charleen, what you think about that as a useful forum for the different Indian groups to express their traditions, or is it really more of a kind of opportunity just for people to come and bring food and have a fair? I don't know what you think about it.
I think personally, it's a wonderful celebration for all of us relatives to come together. But, Muwekma has, and our tribal members, Muwekma has been putting up a booth, or informational booth, for quite a while now. I would say 35 years. Just so that we can bring the visibility of the tribe to the forefront and share our story out there. But our tribal members, our elders who are now passed on, have been going to the event since it's opened, and, connecting with other relatives outside of California that do come to this event. So it's really a celebration with all our indigenous relatives to come together, share our culture, share our foods, the tacos, Indian tacos, and the jewelry. It's a wonderful event for all of us to connect and know each other.
And because you mentioned how people had forgotten the dancing, but then there was some young kids who figured out how it works and what to do. Do you participate? Because I know there's a lot of different groups do dancing in the center portion during that powwow.
Well, actually, Muwekma last year was our first time participating there as California, and it was a beautiful event for us. And every nation welcomed us with open arms, and that was the first time in like 125 years to dance there at Stanford. So it was a beautiful place for us, a rightful place for us to dance there as well.
That's great.
And dance with the other communities. Because, back in the past, you didn't see California dancers there. So we were one of the first to participate.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Melissa, are you still there or you left? Melissa left a note in chat saying that, sorry that I have to leave early, but can you identify some actions that we can take to support the Muwekma Ohlone, such as letter writing or participating in such events?
Yes, if you visit our website, we do have a landing page on how you can go about letter writing to our Congress. Calling them is important because for the last few years, well, actually, since I've been the chair the past 5 years, they've ignored me. Especially, I have to say, Zoe Lofgren She knows the tribe through her whole political career. When she was county supervisor, she was helping the tribe support its efforts to protect our sacred sites. But I wasn't sure what had happened, why she stopped supporting us. But at the time when I became the chair, I immediately reached out to everyone to start engaging them again about possibly legislation on our behalf to restore our status, because administratively the BIA keeps saying go to Congress. They don't want to take action to correct their own mistakes. So they shoot us over to Congress. And since I've been the chair, I've reached out without any support or answer up until recently. Last year, on an issue, a representative on an issue did agree to carry legislation. And what she had said to me is, go get the support from the other representatives to jump on board with me to carry this legislation forward. Well, I got the support from Ro Khanna, Eric Swalwell, who was Jimmy Panetta. They were all on board. But once Zoe Lofgren got wind of what they were doing, she finally reached out to me. But what she said to me is that she didn't want us, she acknowledged our tribe and our struggle, but she said, I want to pass legislation with a gaming prohibition. And meaning, I don't want you to do gaming here in the Bay Area. And I respect her decision, but what I said to her is, this has nothing to do with gaming. That's an economic tool that the tribes, every tribe in California have the right to do if they choose to do that. Because of Proposition 1989, there was a referendum passed by the citizens of California to give tribes, specifically tribes, to do gaming on their lands if they choose to do so, to nation build, to build up their people, to build their housing, education, educate their people. You have to realize not all tribes want to do gaming. And I expressed this to her. The real issue is our sovereignty, not economic development. It's whether we are a tribe or not. That's what you should be asking me, not whether we're going to do a casino or not, because that's a whole nother issue. That involves buying land, putting that land into trust, which takes 15 to 20 years. And then also working with the community. I mean, the community, if the community wants this, it will happen. If the community doesn't want this, it will never happen. And there's been a case already been shown that the community, a community didn't want gaming. And this was in Sonoma City, the county of Sonoma, when Great Rancheria got their federal recognition and they wanted to do gaming. Sonoma didn't want it, so it wasn't placed there. So there's a lot of things that tie into this. But what Zoe was saying is, really, she was trying to negotiate our rights. And what I said to her is, I'm very insulted because I feel my people have given up a lot. We've given up our lands. We've given up our culture, our language. We were killed by the state of California. There was genocide. We were genocided. And you're trying to negotiate more rights away from tribes when the state of California already put that to rest. I didn't understand that. So it kind of stopped everything in its place. And right now we're in a place where we need the community support, because I really believe it's special interests at play when it comes to Muwekma sovereignty. There's other tribes, federally recognized tribes who are doing gaming. They don't want Muwekma recognized because they look at us as competition. And I tell all the 5 Bay Area representatives, our council today is not looking to do gaming. We are working on the most important projects here that are important to us. and that is green initiatives, protecting Mother Earth. We're actually doing this already. And that's what we would like you to support. But we're not going to give up the rights of our children if they choose to do this in the future.
Can you give us the website?
It's
Yeah.
sure. Should I type it in here?
Yeah, put it in
Okay.
the chat.
Okay, how can you type? Would you,
Yeah,
can you share your screen,
Sure,
Charlene?
I think it's in the
Oh,
it's
you
in
gotta
the
do it in
chat.
the chat,
Yeah,
yes.
right there in the chat.
Okay, good, great. I do.
I hope I
Hi.
didn't complicate that issue. But it's
Hi. Oh, hi, this is Michael Wilcox. Can you hear me?
hi, Mike.
Yes.
Hey, I just want to just add something to the discussion about economic development. So the entire budget for the Bureau of Indian Affairs is $3 billion. That's for 500 tribes in the United States. All the social services, everything that the tribes are entitled to. Fire departments, police, court systems, schools is $3 billion. So that's not really enough, even if Muwekma is recognized. You're not going to get a bunch of money from by being a tribe. So what tribes have to do, and the chairwoman is talking about, is developing economic plans that help ensure that the community can be healthy in the future. So the Green Initiative, they've run recycling programs. They run an archaeology company that Alan was so instrumental in founding for the tribe. By the way, he's an amazing historian. And it's not about getting rich. Most tribes who have casinos don't have personal payouts. It just goes to pay for roads, schools, educational initiatives, and that kind of thing. So just add that in there.
The vaccine, so I've
Yeah,
taken
thank
it.
you, Michael.
Mike.
Betsy, do you have a question?
I was wondering if the tribe owns any property now. Do you own the Ohlone Cemetery, or what's the status of that?
No, we don't own it. We don't own land. We're a landless tribe still.
So who owns the Ohlone Cemetery?
It's a nonprofit, under a nonprofit organization.
Thank you.
Who owns the Muwekma Cemetery at this point?
There's family members that are on that land trust. I don't think it's a land trust. It's a nonprofit. It's Ohlone Tribe Inc., I think is what it's under. But we're landless. We created our preservation foundation a few years back, and we're going to use that as a tool to help fundraise and support our efforts to one day own a piece of land, and hopefully, create a native village for our tribal members to live on, so that we're, this generation today and the next generation, we're being gentrified out of the area because of the cost of living. So we're working to fundraise to buy land, and one day build that native village so that we can stay in our homeland and we're not pushed out.
Okay, Charlie, do you have a question?
Yeah, first, is there a time limit here, or are we trying to stop soon? I don't want to get into something if
Yeah, no, we can continue another 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, Charlene, it would just help me if you could kind of summarize and clarify if you were granted status as a tribe, which is one of your big efforts. What are the various things that you would be able to do that you can't do now?
The first thing that has always been the tribe's priority is our ancestors, repatriation of our ancestors. Like I mentioned before, UC Berkeley and other smaller museums are housing our ancestors. UC Berkeley, for one county, Alameda County, is housing 12,000 ancestors.
So if you had tribal status,
we would be able to repatriate. We would be able to.
Yeah,
bring
but-
those ancestors home and put them to rest.
and where would that be if you're a landless tribe? I'm trying to work
Well,
this out.
that's
in my brain.
right. And that's another struggle we have is, we would look to the state and we would look to the institution, the UC system that has land that if they would be graciously enough to open a piece of land to repatriate our ancestors to.
But you would just have more status in this process as,
Right.
as
the
a
right.
recognized tribe.
Yes, the right to repatriate ancestors. Yes, is the
So
main
that's number
that's
one.
number one. Yes.
And what else would there be that would be an
And
advantage?
the advantages would be housing, education. Here's a perfect example of education. UC Berkeley, a few years back, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, just passed policy stating that they would give every federally recognized tribal member free tuition, only if they are part of a federally recognized tribe.
Oh,
So
that would be huge. That would be a
it would
huge.
be very huge because of a lot of our members are struggling just to get to that level.
That's helpful. Yeah, thank you. And I guess one other thing, so many meetings I go to, and it's true in our church as well, there's a land acknowledgement, that we're on the ceded land from such and such a tribe. How can we make that meaningful? How can we make that something that people really take to heart beyond, oh, we're doing land acknowledgement again,
Right. I mean, I really feel personally it is meaningful just from and I realize and understand more needs to happen, but I really look at these land acknowledgements as the first step because you're acknowledging the lands that you are on, that the people are still here. We're not speaking of the past, and that's always been Muwekma's issue. Everyone has always spoke of us of the past, but we are alive and thriving members of this community, and we're here still together. So for me, that's the first step. Of course, more needs to happen, like maybe land rematriation, right? Giving us access back to the land because we were disconnected for far so long. So that would be beautiful, is reconnecting, land repatriation for repatriation issues, creating a native village, all these steps. I know it's a long process, but those are positive steps forward, meaningful steps forward, because this land was stolen from us, right? I mean, it's not your fault, right? And it's not, anybody fault on this call, but what do we do about that? How do we correct the actions of your ancestors? Because we're still here, we're still suffering and trying to get out of that generational trauma.
Okay, Michael? Michael?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, that the land acknowledgements have just started in the last few years, but people don't really understand where they came from or why they're happening. And even if it's just words, it's creating conversations like this one, where people are asking the important questions, which are, who are these people? What happened to them? And what can we do to achieve social justice? And that's kind of why they're important, is because, before that, I'm embarrassed to say, when I was a kid, I grew up in Redwood City, and the entire time I was a young person, I never heard the name of the tribe that was ancestral to this place and belonged to this place. I never heard the word Muwekma Ohlone. I didn't know what that was. So, we're seeing educational initiatives happen because of these acknowledgements, and institutions are trying to figure out the same questions that you're asking. What can we do, and what happened? Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Evan, go ahead.
Is there an example of a tribe somewhere else that has succeeded in getting the recognition that they had not had, and what have they done?
Well, there are three examples. The tribe, the Ohlone tribe, which is over there by Jackson Rancheria, up by the Sierras area. Well, I'm not quite sure, but Mike, do you know where Ohlone's located?
It's in the Central Valley. It's up of Highway 99.
Oh, okay.
So,
I thought it was
yeah,
closer to the Sierra.
it's kind of their territories in between there.
Oh,
But the other
okay.
one is Tejon, which is on the way down to Los Angeles. If you're on Highway 5, you go the Grapevine. That giant reservation there is Tejon. That's a new one that just happened. And Alan, there's another tribe was reinstated in I believe it was in I forget the state where it happened. Is it Montana? Where Congress
Oh,
just
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that was Little Shell. That was in Montana. So that one, the other three tribes that I mentioned, Ohlone, Lower Lake, and Tejon, these tribes happened here in California, which is Muwekma's similarly situated. But the most recent that Mike mentioned, Little Shell went through the process just like we did and were denied through the federal recognition process on the same issue that we were denied on. Continuity. The government said the Bureau of Indian Affairs said their tribe also withered away. So they went through Congress, and it was their legislators that passed the bill confirming and reaffirming their status as a federally recognized tribe. So, like I said, Congress has reaffirmed, restored, or reaffirmed through Congress or the administration, 27 tribes. So there are many examples that we can follow, and we have tried to follow. But I really believe the issue that Muwekma faces, it's political. You know, we have a lot of special interests pushing against our tribe being restored. And we have to overcome that. And I really feel by sharing our story with the community, you will just only amplify our voice even more by coming together with us and reaching out to Congress to take action. Because, you know, just us speaking out is not enough. We need our whole community speaking out on our behalf as well. Because Congress only takes actions with only when they care about the sentiment of their voters, right? So.
Charlie, it's beyond my comprehension why American Indians cannot hire lawyers to represent their cases.
Why? Well, it costs a lot of resources and funding to hire lawyers, you know. So it's.
But Alan said that you are not allowed. Allowed to hire.
Oh, that was in the early 20th century.
Now you can.
Yes, now we can.
Okay.
Yeah, that was when the California Indian judgment was happening.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the past, but yes, now we can have representation.
Okay. Hey, Michael, it's your turn. We are running out of time, so would you make it short?
Okay, I'll be very quick. So citizenship was only extended to Native Americans in 1926, I think, either 24 or 26. So prior to that, you didn't have the same rights to testify in court against white people. You could not own property on your own. And if you had a grievance against the federal government or something of that nature, you had to go through the Bureau of Indian Affairs lawyers. They have to represent you in the case. So when reservations were created, it was with this idea that the tribes were like children, and the federal government was supposed to protect the interests of those of those people. So the idea of tribes was this idea of a domestic dependent nation, and that meant that you can't have arms, you can't fight against the U.S., and in exchange for that, we'll give you the rights of citizenship and we'll protect you. And then when the states had conflicts with the tribes, that's when the federal government kind of shrunk away, and that's what happened in California. So of the 200 tribes in California, most are landless or very small property holdings, that, even if they're federally recognized. And about half of the tribes in California are in the situation of Muwekma. Out of the 200, about 100 are still seeking acknowledgement. So hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Gee, it's a very, very intense and dynamic presentation that we had today. And Charleen, I thank you over and over again for your time and your passion for your own tribe. And I hope that our church can do something with you and for you. And let's see how it goes. Again, I thank you very much, and I thank you all who participate today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And it was my pleasure, to educate you on our history and our story. And I invite you to please visit our website and see how you can help support our efforts in federal recognition, our efforts for repatriation. Actually, the city of San Jose, if any of you live in the city of San Jose, they are looking to pass a resolution in support of our efforts for federal recognition as well. So please reach out to them to encourage them to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Charleen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You guys have a good
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.